We are expecting some fireworks on the debate stage tonight, but will the candidates live up to the hype? Let's go to the strategists to see. Republican strategist Shermichael Singleton is in D.C. Democratic strategist Basil Smikle is with me here in New York. And gentlemen, let's start with the new player in this game, Michael Bloomberg. Right. Basil, I know you worked with him on his re-election campaign back in 2009. Yes. How do you think the Bloomberg factor will change the debate tonight?
Well, my guess is that Bloomberg is probably the most, he's the candidate in this entire cycle with the most bullseyes on his back. Mm-hmm. And so the real question, what I'm going to be watching for is whether and how much he sort of takes the bait. Candidates are going to be going after him, but he's paid a lot of money to frame the race as one between him and Donald Trump, mm-hmm. which is a lane that Joe Biden was in, but he got kind of sidetracked. Low polls, gaffes, and some muddled answers on the debate stage. Does Mike Bloomberg actually pivot back to, in responding to his mm-hmm. opponents, how quickly can he pivot back to, by the way, let's focus on this race between the Democrat and Donald Trump. So I'm going to be looking for that. And, you know, quite frankly, I'm going to be looking for whether the other candidates go in after him so much that they fail to talk about themselves. That's really the danger here. Right? Absolutely right. And let's be clear. So much focus has been on race issues with Mike Bloomberg. Elizabeth Warren, to me, has been one of the most conversant on these issues and the intersection of race and gender in particular. You know, does that come out in this debate, or does everybody just kind of heap a lot of attention on Mike Bloomberg? Because ultimately that ends up raising his profile. So, you know, it's a balance and a line they have to walk.
Shermichael, let me ask you this. Elizabeth Warren tweeted that tonight with Bloomberg on the debate stage, primary voters curious about how each candidate will take on Donald Trump can get a live demonstration of how we each take on an egomaniac billionaire. Now, you also tweeted yesterday that it is hard to like Bloomberg but dislike Trump. Do you agree with Warren there?
I mean, I do agree with her, and I think for a lot of Democrats, it does appear that Mike Bloomberg is essentially where he is because of his massive amount of money. And I think for a lot of voters, at least in my experience on presidential campaigns, it's not just enough to like a candidate. People want to be in love with you. Am I in love with you so much so that I'm going to go out and knock on doors? I'm going to make phone calls. I'm going to talk to my neighbors and my coworkers about going out and voting for you in the primary process. And I'm not certain at this point in time that people feel that way about Mike Bloomberg, coupled with his issues pertaining to race. I think there have been some recent allegations about previous sexual harassment suits that he's settled in the past. Those things may also come up. And I got to be frank with you here. Michael Bloomberg is not a charismatic person. He's not someone who's good at retail politics. And when you look at his previous debates and you look at the public appearances he's had thus far, they're usually around 15 to 20 minutes. So this is someone who has a lot to prove tonight on the debate stage.
It's so funny because you say he's not charismatic. For a lot of us here in New York, we just call that being a New Yorker, but we'll have to see how well that does in the rest of the country. Let me ask both of you this. Bloomberg has been in a Twitter fight with Trump over the last 24 hours. Today he tweeted, "Impeached president says what?" Some people argue that he has pretty much mastered trolling Trump on social media and may in fact be showing that he's the candidate who could stand up to Trump on the debate stage and then in the general election. Basil, do you agree with that?
No, I actually think that there are other candidates that can go up against Donald Trump just as effectively, but
perhaps even better?
Perhaps even better. But it's his strategy to frame the race as a race between him and Donald Trump. The one other point that I would make, and sort of maybe a piggyback off of something Shermichael said, is that let's just remember a fight between Donald Trump and Mike Bloomberg is sort of the 1% of the 1%ers. Yeah. And I wonder how much that actually turns off a lot of voters that really want to hear candidates. And for those that have embraced candidates and felt really enthusiastic about candidates like Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, those are folks who've consistently talked about income inequality and other issues. Is the country and our Democrats specifically going to be able to embrace a fight between some of the wealthiest people in this country and maybe even in the world? Does that actually work? Does that actually push people out to the polls? Or are voters going to say, you know what, it's just more of the same. Nobody's really speaking for me.
Before I let Shermichael respond, who do you think would do better?
To be honest, I don't know. I am clueless about this race right now. I have the same problem some of the other voters have. Issues. I don't know. I am not. I am enthusiastic about our chances, but I am still waiting to be courted by a particular by a candidate. I want to fall in love too.
Come on, Democrats! It's time to court Basil. He's ready to fall in love. All right, Shermichael, let me give you an opportunity to respond. Then, do you think that Bloomberg is the guy to take on Trump? And then, if not, has anyone courted you in particular that you think think could do a better job?
Look, I will say this. Tonight will give an indication of how well Michael Bloomberg does under pressure. I remember when a couple of days after some of the racial remarks came out and he had a conference with some reporters, and it was awful to watch. He stumbled over the responses. He attempted to avoid the questions, and he almost came off in an entitled sense of, how dare you ask me those questions? That does not resonate very well with the average voter. I just have to be honest with you. So I'm not convinced his ability to be effective on Twitter will translate to an effectiveness on a debate stage where over 1 million plus Americans may potentially watch. And as it relates to some of the candidates, I have friends on some campaigns that have sought my advice, and I'll leave it at that.
All right, so enough about the new guy. We've been giving Bloomberg a whole lot of airtime. Let me ask you about our frontrunner, Bernie Sanders. He's in the top spot strongly in a number of national polls. That means people are going to be going after him tonight, too. Right. Shermichael, I'll let you answer this one the first. What are you looking for from Bernie tonight?
I mean, I think Bernie Sanders needs to defend and expand upon some of his platforms. We know what they are, but he hasn't really articulated to voters how are you going to accomplish this in a divided Congress where Democrats sure control the House, but the Senate is controlled by Republicans. And so I think for a lot of people who are thinking, well, maybe Sanders has the potential to become the nominee, is it realistic that some of these grandiose utopic ideas can actually come to fruition? And from my perspective, he has not articulated or made a strong enough defense in case that is indeed possible.
Basil, are you concerned that a Democratic Socialist can't be the nominee for the Democratic Party? I'm
not concerned about that because I'm really not concerned about that because I actually don't have a problem with his policies. Okay. There are other aspects of the campaign that may cause me some concern, but I do agree with Shermichael that I think he needs to come out with some concrete plans about how he accomplishes some of his goals, particularly in a divided Congress. I'll also add what's interesting about Bernie Sanders is he may even get a pass for a little while. He had and has frontrunner status, so a lot of attention should be heaped on him. But now that Mike Bloomberg's on the debate stage, in some ways it takes some of the onus off of him to actually have that explanation, to make those explanations, and now focus all of his attention on Mike Bloomberg. So he may get a pass for a couple of days in terms of him having to actually answer these really tough questions about his policies.
So maybe the only person who's almost as excited as Mike Bloomberg about being on the stage is Bernie Sanders, right? All right. All right, Basil, Shermichael, thank you both. Great panel. Great to have you with us.
Thank you.
Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.